Hello everybody, it's Josie here and I'm back with another wrap-up. So this one is for my readathon, the first one of the month, and that is the Lalathon. So Lalathon is hosted by Kayla. Her channel is called Books and Lala, and I thought this was a really fun idea. It ran from the 1st of November to the 9th of November, and the idea was to read some of Lala's favourite books along with her. So she picked a bunch of her favourite books to read, and everyone can go to her Goodreads list that she posted. I think it was around 200 or 250 of her favourite reads, and you could pick and choose from those and kind of read along with her some of her favourite books. So I had a look at that list, and luckily I have 6 books here that were sitting on my TBR shelves that were also on her list of favourite books, so it gave me quite a good excuse to read these books, probably a bit earlier than I would have, or just gave me incentive to read them. And I've also realised that I have quite a specific taste in this genre of books. So I love books about friendship rather than romance. I'm not really into kind of intense romance novels. And really all of the books that I've picked as part of this readathon, their central theme is friendship and the dynamics and the power dynamics, and particularly around female friendship. And no offense, gentlemen, but I think female friendships tend to be a little bit more complex in nature and in psychology, and can actually be, as we find out in some of these reads, a lot more damaging almost, and a lot more intense, and you almost start to take on each other's personalities. And I love reading these kinds of books. I love reading thrillers and mysteries that are focused on women, and I love reading books that are about friendship and about women. So without further ado, let me get to the books that I read as part of the readathon. So the first two, this may be a little unfair, but these two books often get compared to each other, and I'm going to talk about them at the same time because I read them one after another, and I feel like there are a lot of comparisons between these two. So they are If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio and The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Now, I know a lot of people love both of these books. They've been out for a while. These are not new reads. And they are on the lists of many people's favourite books and favourite reads. So I read Secret History first, and then If We Were Villains. Both of these books are set at university, which again I love, and actually you don't get that many books set at university, strangely. And they both centre around groups at university that are kind of, I guess, a bit exclusive groups. So this one here, The Secret History, these students are studying classics and studying Greek and Greek tragedies, and they study with a very eccentric professor, and one that only picks 5 or 6 students every year to take part in his course. So it's very elite getting into this particular Greek classics course. Then in this book over here, If We Were Villains, they are at a performing arts college, and this group of students, again, they're quite a small group. They study mainly Shakespeare plays. And I think what's interesting about both of these premises is that, first of all, it's quite exclusive. It's quite sort of secret society-ish, each one of them. And also what they're studying kind of seeps into their consciousness and seeps into how they behave. So here in If We Were Villains, there is a lot of Shakespeare references, and a lot of the passengers, when they're talking to each other, they're actually talking in Shakespeare dialogue. And then this one here, The Secret History, they spend a lot of time likening their lives to Greek tragedies that they're studying. And with both of these, you have a central mystery of a death and a bit of a whodunit. But for me, the overriding thing about both of these is, again, about friendship, about how we take on characteristics from a friend group in order to fit in. And also, both of these feature queer characters. And If We Were Villains particularly, I think you have friendship, but you also have love, and discovering who you love and how far you would go to protect the people you love. So if I'm totally honest, I prefer If We Were Villains. So I would give Secret History 3.5 stars, which is probably a bit controversial because I know a lot of people love this book and would give it 5 stars. But for me, I can understand why people call it a modern classic, because it is very well written. It's a great story, it's really interesting, but it was a little bit slow for me. And I maybe didn't get what I was promised on the tin. So in the blurb at the back, it talks a lot about this eccentric professor and how these students kind of descend into a little bit of madness and some ritualistic things and things like that. And there wasn't that much of that. And also you didn't really get to see that much of Gillian, who's the professor. I think there could have been more of that element. With If We Were Villains, I think the pacing was a lot quicker. I enjoyed the central, shall we call it, mystery a lot more on this one. And I liked the characters more. I was more invested in a couple of the characters in this one. And this one I gave 4 stars to. So I enjoyed both of them. I would recommend reading both of them. But if I'm totally honest, if you're only going to read one, I would read If We Were Villains. So I know that's an unpopular opinion, but we'll go with it. So the next one I read is this one here, Beautiful Broken Things. Now this book I really, really loved. It, again, its central theme is friendship, but I also think it's a bit more than that. It actually was more than I was expecting. I was expecting it to more be sort of a little bit of a teenage friendship, maybe a bit gossip girly kind of thing, but actually there is a lot darker, deeper themes on this. So self-harm, there's triggers there, self-harm and self-suicide, suicide, and again, that influence that friends can have over you, that can turn somebody from being this good girl that never does anything into what people would perceive as a bad girl and doing things that people think is out of character. What I also think the central theme of this book is self-acceptance and self-love. Because the way it ends, and I'm not going to give the ending away, I promise, I think it ends on that note of actually being able to accept yourself for who you are. And I really loved this. The other thing I loved about this is it's set in Brighton, where I live. So that was kind of cool. I didn't realise it was set in Brighton, and having that kind of really familiar setting put me into the story even more than one that was unfamiliar, I guess. So I really loved this book. I gave this 4 stars. It's a great read. I do recommend it. Not only, obviously it's YA, because you're dealing with teenage friendships, but I think adults would get a lot out of this as well. So I really loved it, and this is a 4-star read for me. It was, let me just say, it was a good, nothing's lower than the 3.5 I gave Secret History, so it was a good readathon. The next one here is, even though it focuses on a murder and kind of a murder mystery, is a bit lighter actually in theme than all of my others. So this one, 6 stories, I picked this one up because I love the idea of a podcast. So the whole book is written in the style of a podcast. So if you've watched Serial, I'm a huge Serial nerd, I love Serial podcast. And this is what it kind of reminded me of, and that's what made me pick up this particular book. So the whole thing's written in the style of the podcast. You're dealing with an old murder that happened in the sort of early mid-90s. And this group of students went out with their counsellors out into this wood for this, they used to do almost like a brownies or scouts type thing, and they used to go out camping in the woods. And a 15-year-old boy, who was part of their group, ends up dead, or missing initially, and then they find his dead body a few years later. And it's around what really happened to him. He was declared misadventure because they just assumed he wandered off and died in the woods, but you know, we're not so sure. So this kind of takes you through, it's called 6 stories because it interviews 6 people that were there. They tell their story. So again, very serial. It's very cool the way it's written, all the way through like a transcript. I did guess some of the things that were in here. So, you know, whether you do or don't, it didn't really hamper my enjoyment of it. I still really enjoyed it. It's not very thick. It's a quick read. If you like that kind of murder mystery serial podcast thing, I'd recommend this. This is a lot of fun. I would give it 4 stars as well, actually. Really enjoyed reading this one. The next one is this one over here, is All These Beautiful Strangers. Now, I've been going on about how much I adore this cover and the fact that it says I know down the side, and it just, the colours and that is so beautiful. This is such a beautiful cover. And I've been actually dying to get around to read this, so thank you, Books and Lala. So this one, again, much like Beautiful Broken Things, is about friendship, is about female friendships, is about a group of kids that are at an elite boarding school. They're 17, and there is this kind of secret society at this boarding school called the A's, and every year they kind of take on some new members, and as you can imagine, there's some initiation. that goes on. So that's part of the story. And then the other part of the story is our main character, Charlie. Her mother disappeared a number of years previous, and there's this open kind of mystery around, is she dead? Did she commit suicide? Did she run away? Did she leave? What happened to her? And another part of this book is Charlie unraveling what happened, and you have this whole thing about secrets and lies and families, and she's sort of uncovering all of this as we go along in the book. Again, really enjoying this. It's, even though it's 500 pages long, it's quite a thick book, it is a quick read because I kind of wanted to get through it and see what happens. So the stories interweave. You have chapters where it's Charlie and the current day. You have chapters where it's her mother and her father. So you kind of have different points of view. I really enjoyed this book. I think it lives up to the beautiful cover, and I would say definitely another 4-star read. Really recommend it. Then my last book that I read, to say this is one of my all-time new favourite books is an understatement. I love this book. It is definitely going to be on my top 10 for the end of the year. In fact, it's my top 10, I think, reads ever. And it's called Girls on Fire. This book, it absolutely broke my heart. It made me cry. It made me just, it broke me, this book. So the central theme of this is a friendship between 2 girls, but actually 3. But this friendship between the 2 main characters, and it is that, again, that classic thing of who we are. We want acceptance from other people. We want love. We have to face up to our own demons. We have to face up to our own darkness. And sometimes we get pulled into other people's darkness. And that desire of, am I happy with who I am? Do I want to change who I am? Do I want to fit in with other people? This complex female relationships in here. The cast is 99% female. There is the odd male character, but it is completely focused on these girls and their friendship and the complexity and the psychological harm we can do each other, but also how we lift each other up, how we heal, how the past affects us. There's quite a few trigger warnings in here, as again, self-harm, suicide. It's dark. This book is dark. It is actually an adult book, although the characters are 17 at the time that we meet them. This is very dark themes. Some of it is hard to read. The other element, and the reason why I'm wearing my Kurt shirt today and my witch neck piece, is it's set in the early 90s. One of the characters, Lacey, is absolutely obsessed with Kurt Cobain. And that weaves its way through the book, and you have chapters that are named after Nirvana songs, and I love that because I love Nirvana. I'm crazy about Kurt, about his story about Courtney, and I grew up in the early mid 90s. That is my era. That weaves its way through this book, and it's a beautiful juxtaposition. It just, I mean, you can see how many tabs are on this book. I can't even express how much I love this, how much the story is gut-wrenching and heartbreaking and beautiful. And I know this book came out a few years ago, so I'm not sure if there was hype when it first came out, but I haven't seen that much hype about this, and I think people should read this. It is gorgeous. It is beautifully written. My one gripe is the cover. Ignore, the cover's terrible. If I was the publisher, no. But yeah, it is, like I said, it's hard to read at times, but it's beautiful, and it really makes you think about friendship, about how far we go, what we do about love as well. There's a queer element in this, obsession, revenge, just an incredibly intense, gut-wrenching book, and this is 5-star plus for me. Unbelievable. Read it. Yeah, it won't, I don't know, actually, I'm not sure if I particularly like the ending. And we obviously won't give it away, but it won't leave you warm and fuzzy, but it will really make you think. So read it, please read it. I love this book. Yeah. So anyway, on that intense note, that was my wrap up. Have a great rest of November. I will be back soon with another wrap up, and thanks for watching. Bye.